Hello, everybody! How is everyone doing tonight? Hopefully you can hear me okay. Let me know if there's any audio issues. In any case, it's so good to be back here with you guys. I feel like I've been a little distant lately when it comes to kind of talking with you guys in the Discord. Mainly because I have midterms coming up, and so I've been a little bit busy, preoccupied, preparing for those. Prayers would be appreciated. If you can't tell, I'm a little bit tired as well. And I'm not sure exactly why, because I got a nap and everything, and I even got some food before I started, but for some reason I feel really lethargic today. In any case, the show must go on. And I just wanted to kind of note that I know I might feel a little bit aloof right now from you guys, but I want to make sure that that we're keeping good relations with the Discord family. So I'll be joining with you with Nasuno and Oswald, I believe. They always like to play War Thunder, so I'll be joining you guys tonight. Thankfully I don't have to wake up early tomorrow, so hopefully that'll be a good time. Some, I guess you could say, housekeeping things to go over is the book tour. We need to have that. We need to have the book tour. It's on my sites. I was going to do it sometime last week because we had to reschedule from Thursday, or rather Saturday, which was the date it was originally planned. However, we were waiting for Tucker. I really want him to be there. He's a very active participant. That's the same reason I rescheduled it away from Saturday, is because Orange couldn't be there. So I'm trying to get as many people who are, very active participants to be there as I possibly can in our community. And so I'm going to do my best to do that sometime next week, preferably after Wednesday, though. Maybe Thursday or maybe Saturday next week. Or something of that sort, just because I have a midterm Wednesday, or maybe Wednesday itself, because the midterm will be done by Wednesday night. So, in any case, yes, the Discord is public. I can drop a link after the main portion of the show is over. I generally do that. Let's see what else. Huge announcement. This is really exciting. My good friend, I met him when I was in Washington, D.C., what is his name? Earl of Grey on Telegram or Pure Politics. You should definitely check out his channel, Pure Politics. He's also on Trovo. I believe he streams a little earlier in the day on Fridays, so I have to miss his show, but he does great work. He's a good friend of mine. He has really nice equipment. He's 100% on board of the anime first movement. He's one of the him, Wooza, and a Culture War Criminal. We're like the only community so far that's publicly in favor of the anime first group. It's very brave of them to do that. In any case, I will be going on there with him, his show tomorrow on YouTube Live at 10 o'clock a.m. I believe is the time. And you can check that out. I think just look up Pure Politics on YouTube and it should come up. If someone has a link, they could drop that. That'd be cool. I already announced it in the Discord though. So if you can make that might be a fun thing to look at, just because I'm not sure what the questions he's going to ask me are, but maybe we'll get to know those people who are new here, might get to know me better. Or whatever. So yes, that is coming up and that will be awesome. Let me just first plug the entropy link before I dive right into some of the substance tonight. As I mentioned last week, we have finished the sacraments. We are going through the sacraments of the Catholic Church. We wrapped that up. So I said we're going to transition now to talking about the Holy Catholic Mass in its Tridentine form, the Latin Mass. I was going to go through, dissect it, talk about the parts, particularly going through, kind of walking through the book, The Latin Mass Explained. I decided before I do that, before I jump into this kind of new program, I wanted to go over some things that Protestants might bring up, or that are kind of not periphery to Catholic teaching. They're a very important part, but they're not often discussed. So I wanted to kind of mention those, cover all my bases. I was thinking about doing something about purgatory, but we already kind of talked about that, I think, sufficiently when I talked about penance. And then also indulgences we already covered. So those are tonight we're going to be covering relics and sacramentals. Relics in particular are something that Protestants Martin Luther and et al. Did not like, so we can kind of, have a good discussion about that. But the portions on the Mass will be hopefully starting next week. Hopefully we can kick that off. That is going to be very exciting. I'll probably minimize myself and I'll have I'll find a good one. I'll find a good one with some really good camera angles. Some Mass, probably a solemn high Mass or a Missa Cantata. And then I can just walk through it and kind of like explain it, especially from the perspective of someone who was a former altar server. Was an altar server for about like a year, maybe a little more than that. So good stuff. So there's the entropy link there. I'm just dropping that in the chat if you wish to ask me questions or support me monetarily. Besides talking about relics and sacramentals, which are not the same thing, by the way, but I think there's like a bridge between them that I decided to talk about them both. Or I'll try my best to get to them both, at least. Before I do that, I did want to talk about something that's going on in Germany right now. And then after we do the theology portion, of course, it's anime hour after theology hour. And we're going to be watching, what is the anime again? It's about the teenage girl who is living, is high school girl living with an adult, and it's very clean, it's very wholesome anime, slice of life stuff, so definitely stay for that, or at least come back if you have to like leave for some reason. So that is to look forward to tonight. That's kind of the agenda. And before I even get into what's going on in Germany, which I don't know if you guys saw this, but I just want to give a quick anecdote today. I saw, I think it was like yesterday, on like the news, it showed some cop who shot a black guy. Oh, big surprise, right? And the confrontation between the cop and this gentleman, the cop was, I don't know why, like flagging him and telling him that he needed to stop, he needed to talk to him. He kept saying that many times. And then the black dude pulls out a knife and is like, "Come on, kill me, you won't." Literally saying that to the cops. And then the cops like tells him like 3 times to put down the knife, which is probably more than enough, probably too many, frankly. And then he just eventually shoots the guy. And I don't know if like people rioted over that yet or not, but I remember seeing that video and thinking, wow, this kind of explains the mentality behind which that will result in these tragic incidents like that. And today I kind of witnessed firsthand that mentality. There's this, as I've often mentioned, I work at a homeless shelter, kind of a dangerous situation, and there's this one black dude, kind of a big guy, I think he's a black nationalist, in fact. He's very much like We Was Kangs type of stuff, always going about conspiracy theories and the weirdest things, man. Like anything, like he was saying today that Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln were like the first black presidents. So yeah, chew on that one. In any case, he was saying something about how like he was at Walmart and he was like, "Man, I go to Walmart," and he has like the most thickest urban accent, if that's how you want to call it, whatever it is. Sounds very uneducated is how I would put it. In any case, he was talking about his experience and he was like, "Oh, I was at Walmart and shit, and then this lady come up to me and was like, 'You need to put on your mask.' And I was like, 'Hell no. Oh shit.' And I'm like quoting him directly. I'm doing my best to quote him directly. This isn't just me like making a caricature. I'm not even lying. He's like, I was like, 'I'll beat the shit out of you if you tell me to do that. Man, I'll bring this from 0 to 100 right fucking now, man.'" And forgive the vulgarity. This is how he was saying. He's like, "Yeah, I'll beat the shit out of you." He's literally saying that. He was like, "I'll beat the shit out of you, tell me to put on my mask, man." And then, he's like, I was like, "Well, what if they like call the police or something like that?" And he's like, "Man, I don't give a fuck about the police. I'll beat them up too. I was at the police station the other day, and, he's like, and he said like, my friend was there and I didn't like this guy. And so I told him, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. And the police were right there." And I was like, "Oh, did they do anything?" And they're like, "Nah, the police just look at me like I'm crazy." I'm like, "And what if they like, try to like arrest you or something for threatening people?" Cause it's like, this guy's like kind of, big and like he doesn't seem like he's joking. He's like, "Man, I'll tell the police, yeah, you call up your mama, you call up your sister, cause I'm gonna beat the shit out of you so bad, you better tell them you love them. Man, I'm gonna beat you up, no one's gonna stop me." And I was like, that explains why you guys are, getting shot and getting killed. You just have no sense of respect or decency to the civil authorities. I mean, it's starting to make a lot of sense now. And I feel so I know she literally, and I was like, okay, I'm just a worker. I don't want to get fired. Sometimes it's really hard to be charitable. I have to admit, it's really easy to give into being uncharitable, to say the least. I really want to be like trolly sometimes, but that'd probably get me killed. So, and of course lose my job. So I gotta just like I just don't say anything. I just like, okay, interesting. And he also says something today about how, like, he thought cops should be like shot, which was like really incendiary. And I was like, whoa. So yeah, there's some crazy people out there. And unfortunately, it seems that number is 13% of the population. So that is an interesting story. I just had to get off my chest because it was weighing down on me, having to deal with that. And it makes me want to quit my job sometime. Just having to, be patient with these people. Honestly, it's very trying. It's a penance. It really is a penance from God. He's trying to teach me to be charitable. I'm like, oh man, this is tough. It's tough. In any case, it explains a lot. It explains a lot. The state we're in. It explains a lot why we have so many of these incidents of uppity African American folks who are getting shot by the police. So yeah, that's the story there. Okay, but moving on now to serious things. Recently in Germany, and I don't know if you guys saw this, I think it's like 2,500 priests have signed some like online thing saying that they're going to be holding these blessing ceremonies for couples, and it says explicitly including straight couples, gay couples, and it's basically in response to the statement issued by the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith concerning the fact that Catholic priests cannot, under any circumstance, bless same-sex unions or civil unions, but between same-sex couples. And the response to it from the Germans has been disobedience. And we saw from one of the bishops, they explicitly have said that they disagree with this statement and they're going to fight it. I think one of the cardinals actually said that they told the Pope that they should bring this bishop and correct him because he's basically he's acting very perniciously. He's basically disobeying the direct laws of the church and even the law of God, frankly. And the Pope hasn't done so yet. And so for that reason, I guess the German clergymen have decided that they want to throw down the gauntlet before the Pope, basically. And so there's this kind of mass rebellion, and it looks like schism is on the horizon, unfortunately. And so, like I said, I think it's like 2,500 priests, deacons have signed this form saying they're going to have these ceremonies. They're going to put gay flags on all their churches, which is great because then it'll really kind of the four angels of who pour out God's wrath. They know exactly now where to go, which parishes to target. But these are very, very dark things. It's very incensing for pious ears too, the idea that someone would pervert something as holy and as cherished in our civilization. And this is a gift from God, holy matrimony, as we talked about it being a sacrament. And society has perverted it and distorted it. And now even there are clergymen, members of the cloth, who are rebelling against God, leading souls astray into heresy, and even to hell for people who may be experiencing homosexual tendencies. And they're being told, oh yeah, this is fine. You can live out you can commit sodomy, which is of course like a mortal sin. It's one of the four sins that calls out to God for vengeance, in fact. And so, this is very serious, and it's like, reminds me of when Jesus said, it is better for a millstone to be tied around one's neck and for them to be cast into the sea than to deceive one of the little ones. And I think the most, innocent members of our society are going to be very confused and led astray by such actions by these German bishops. And basically the bishops are stamping off, approving this, saying that they're not going to stop it. I think some might even be joining in, I'm not sure, but for sure they've explicitly said they will not stop priests from doing this in their diocese. And so this is a serious issue, and I think that we, as Catholics, faithful Catholics, we need to pray for the Pope pray for our Holy Father that he'll make good decisions. He's not known for being very confrontational against heretics. For example, I think it was the Buenos Aires diocese that interpreted Amoris Laetitia, or Laetitia, one of his first papal encyclicals. Actually, it was his first papal encyclical. Yeah, I think it was the Buenos Aires diocese. They interpreted it to mean that divorced and remarried Catholics, which is basically to say a Catholic living in sin, could receive Holy Communion, and the Holy Father didn't say anything about it, which caused a great scandal in the church a few years ago, if anyone remembers that. In any case, this is probably a much more serious issue. This is much more direct, since the Pope has already issued a statement saying that Catholic priests can't do this. So pray for the Holy Father that he'll have wisdom in managing this very difficult situation. You know, if I was in control, which is probably a reason I'm not, but if I was, then I would have declared interdict over all of Germany. I would shut all of Germany down. I don't think they've declared interdict since the Middle Ages. I would declare interdict over all of Germany, which is basically ecclesiastical censure over all of the entire region. Then I would excommunicate and anathematize ipso facto, latatio sententia, any priest who is engaged in these diabolical heresies. And then I would tell the Italian bishops to absorb all the German dioceses, into themselves. I think that would probably be the best way to deal with this. And then I would tell the German government to get involved and to submit to Rome and to bring back the Holy Roman Empire. And then I would ask for the Papal States back. Anyway, I have a laundry list of things I would do, but in this situation, I would declare interdict, just shut it all down, because it seems like this rampant heresy. And this is going to lead to just spiraling. It's going to help to accelerate and to spiral the loss of faith, what we see in the church right now. Like I've mentioned many times, it's like the number of people who believe in the true presence it's like what, 10% maybe. The number of people who think that contraception is sinful, which the church has always taught that, is 1% of the church who thinks that. It's 1%. Think that a mortal sin is a mortal sin. And so it's very unfortunate, and so we have to be praying for the church, and we know that these things they're going to have consequences, serious consequences, and we need to be prepared for that. Yeah, we need to. Spedna's Groiper is German, I believe, but his country's not looking so good right now. The spirit of Martin Luther is alive and well. We need a new what was the papal bull issued against Martin Luther? Espeges Domine. Expenses Domine. I might be saying that wrong, but it's it starts with "Arise, O Lord, and judge thy cause." I memorized the first few lines because it's so poetic. It's "Arise, O." It was the papal bull issued by Leo X against Martin Luther. "Arise, O Lord, and judge thy cause. For wild foxes have entered thy vineyard, seeking to destroy it." And he goes on to say something about wild boars are trampling down your vineyard, O Lord. Arise up, and with the authority of the apostles Peter and Paul, we declare that anyone who gives in to these heresies of the reprobate are excommunicate in the most maximum degree. And he stamps it with his ring. It's a very poetic, very powerful papal bull. We need another one like that. Pope Leo the 13th was not, Leo the 10th rather, was not one of the better popes, but that was a very powerful document. So we need something to that effect. The Pope needs to disavow Germans. Like I said, the spirit of Martin Luther, the spirit of rebellion, which has been, brewing since the Enlightenment, brewing since the Renaissance, really, since the abolition of the Knights Templar, some may argue. The humanism and secularism that came from the Renaissance, it's just it's reached this climax right now in the church in particular, I'm saying. Alright, so again, pray for the church and be prepared for hard times. The church the hardest time the church probably went through is when there's three popes competing for power: Alexander V, Clement VII, and Urban VI, I believe, and eventually had to be settled through a imperfect council. But that was a very trying time because there's also two emperors, I believe, as well, and that at that moment in history, people thought it was the end of the world. People were literally praying more fervently than they ever had because they thought that Jesus was going to come back soon. There were three people claiming to be Pope. There was this massive power struggle. There were two people claiming to be Emperor. I believe it was either the Holy Roman Empire or something like that. I don't know my history as well as some of you guys probably do of the kings and emperors, but in papal history, I know that probably better. But in any case, that was a very trying time for the church. We might go through something very similar. So I'm just kind of warning you guys and encouraging you and exhorting you guys to make sure you pray for the church. Why are you dissing on the Anabaptists? The Anabaptists all moved out of Germany. There are no Anabaptists left in Germany. All the Anabaptists have left Germany. They're in America now. People are saying they're being very rude to the Anabaptists because that's my family lineage, even though the Anabaptists, for the most part, are pretty conservative today. They're still very conservative, They're like the Mennonites. Have you seen them? They're not as, conservative and as cool as the Amish, but they're pretty cool. I recommend checking them out. But, no, obviously they're not. Obviously they're heretics in the sense that they go against Rome. But I don't know if the Anabaptists are to blame for that. Certainly, there are probably more underlying currents, but the Anabaptists are cringe in a lot of their beliefs. I will admit that. I like the fact they do reject modern society. They're more Luddite than a lot of other Christians, which is kind of cool. But other than that, yeah, they're obviously not. They're not the true church, obviously. But I'm not going to be rude to my heritage. I'm very proud of my heritage. I can't look back in shame at my ancestors. That is what libtards want me to do. Libtards are telling me to hate myself. Not gonna happen. Myself is myself. My history is my history. What can I do? It's what formed me. Identitarianism is not it's not this positive assertion. Or it is not some ism, it's like a membership in a club or something like that, or an ideology. Identitarianism is kind of just a recognition. It's just a recognition. It's this basic recognition that our identity, who we are as a person, how we define ourselves when we think of Anime-ritis or Oswald or any of you number of people watching the show, is going to be in part defined by, of course, your family, which gives you your genes. And, of course, your society, your race, your nation, which is kind of your extended family in a certain sense, your genetic pool. These things are going to define who we are. That's just the way things be. And they define both who we are in terms of their genetics, the way we think, oftentimes the way we act, the way we feel, in terms of our proclivities, but as also the society we live in, and they're the ones who establish the foundation for that. And that's why I'm very strongly an American nationalist, because American society was founded by a very particular group of people that laid the foundation for such a great and expansive country. Okay. Now, moving on. Here we're talking about relics tonight. And so that passage in the Baltimore Catechism, we're going through the Baltimore Catechism, is it talking about saints in general? And I'll just kind of read some of what they have to say to kind of set things up. And so it says, and this is in conjunction, this is lesson 17, with the commandment, because the Catechism goes through all the 10 commandments. The first commandment that you shouldn't make any idols. And so it's saying, does making idols mean that we cannot honor the saints? And the Catechism very explicitly says the first commandment does not forbid us to honor the saints in heaven, provided we do not give them the honor that belongs to God alone. In other words, we can publicly venerate them, the same way that we venerate heroes in our nation's history, the same way that we look up to and respect people that have gone before us, perhaps Napoleon or Alexander the Great or whoever else you might respect from history. These people, men of valor, we look upon and see that they have lived a an exemplary life, and therefore we kind of we honor that, we respect that, and then we want to imitate that to some degree. And the best role models we have on this earth are the saints. The saints are going to be the best example of that. I think a lot of modern people might look up to someone like Kanye West or someone secular like that. I think probably my audience is not so superficial, but the best, the highest form of like a role model that we can look up to, that we can honor and give proper respect to, is of course the saints. And by giving respect to the saints, this is very important, we do in fact honor God. Because it is only through the graces of God, it is only through the power of God, that these saints were capable of performing such great deeds, such miracles, being able to be bold, to blithely go into martyrdom, for example, to be very bold in that. And it says here in the Catechism that a saint, and this is the definition, in the strict sense of the word, is a person who is declared officially by the Church to be in heaven and who may be publicly venerated. And so there's two parts to that. For one, the strict definition, just like this official definition, is that it's someone who's in heaven. It's part of the Church triumphant. The Church militant are those members of the body of the Church who roam around the earth. The Church triumphant are those who have completed their journey on earth and are now in heaven. So it's all the members of the Church triumphant. They're all saints. However, the Church says they're also someone that we should be able to venerate, and therefore the people the Church makes saints, they have to exemplify what's called heroic virtue. In other words, their lives have to give testimony to the three prime virtues: faith, hope, and charity. They have to exemplify them in some extraordinary degree, oftentimes through martyrdom or through persecution, overcoming those things. And often makes them someone who we can look up to. After that, if the Pope or some bishop recognizes the heroic virtue of someone, they are presented to the Pope might make them venerable. And then if there is some miracle that has been posthumously attributed to this person, meaning that if someone asks for their intercession, which I'll get to in a moment, kind of what that means, and there's some proven miracle, and in order for there to be a miracle, there has to be three requirements. One, it has to be full. It has to be full, meaning that whatever the ailment is, usually it's a medical issue. It has to be completely healed. You can't just like feel better, you know. Two, it has to be instantaneous. It can't be over a period of time. And three, it must be durable, meaning it must last. So those are the three requirements the Church gives for there to be a valid miracle, and it's the Church says that there must be medical examiners as well as theologians who can analyze it to make sure that it's like legit. Then the Pope might make someone beatify them, blessed. They make them blessed, which means that the Church is invited now to venerate them, invited now to make them a saint, but it's not kind of like the full stamp of approval yet. Like this basically gives them permission. It's permissible to look up to them as a saint. Then if they have a second miracle, if there can be two confirmed miracles posthumously attributed to someone who has been deceased, and then as they've asked for their intercession, some layperson, then the Pope basically through some process says, okay, this person is now going to be a saint, and he invites the whole Church to venerate them and exhorts them to do so on All Saints' Day. And it has always been the majority opinion of theologians and Church Fathers that the ability of the Pope to canonize saints is infallible. Given the fact that there is a distinction between beatification and canonization, it does seem to imply that canonization, at least, it requires us to believe that the Pope is infallible. Otherwise, it basically nullifies the very point of sainthood. And so I know some people, particularly traditionalists, as of recently, they don't like the fact that Pope John Paul II, John the 23rd, and Pope Paul IV, as of recent, were all canonized. And I can understand why. And so they often say, oh, these canonizations were, we can reject them or throw them out for whatever reason. They often point to the fact that the canonization process has changed slightly. They no longer have what they used to call the devil's advocate, which was someone who was supposed to find dirt on like these people who are up for sainthood. And for that reason, it was believed that then, okay, maybe we can call into validity the process of canonization, and I think that's quite presumptuous on traditionalists. And while I'm a fan of the Society of St. Pius X and what Marcel Lefebvre did, I'm also still a staunch believer in the supremacy of Rome and in hierarchy, and I'm not, an individualist, so I think it's very dangerous for individuals to question these things. And it's very, most theologians today do not agree to that as well. So that is one of the issues I do take up with, I guess you could say disagree with the society on, and maybe some other traditionalists. I don't think it's that big of a stretch to say that the latter popes were probably material heretics. Perhaps you could argue, even that, I'm very uncomfortable even saying that, material heretics. They are perhaps very imprudent in many ways. They signed off on things that were, very dangerous and destructive to the faith, like the new Mass, or some of the documents in the Second Vatican Council, like Diginatus Humanae, and those type of things. So, in any case, but they can still be in heaven, and they can still, they still demonstrated some heroic virtue in the sense that they were confessors of the faith to some degree. John the 23rd, he, at the end of his life, he said, stop the council. There's something to be said about that. Paul IV had Humanae Vitae, his very famous encyclical about contraception. He confessed the faith, and he did so very boldly, even if there was a lot of pressure on him to bow to the modernists on that issue. And then, as well as St. John Paul II, even if he kissed the Quran and did things that were very imprudent, and I'll leave it to subsequent church councils to explain, whether that was material heresy. It was just in the moment he was just trying to be charitable and went overboard to do something that's very scandalous to pious eyes. Regardless, Pope John Paul II affirmed a lot of traditional doctrines about the need for the priesthood to be male, and for it to be same-sex marriage being wrong, things of this sort. So, in any case, I'm just kind of giving there was a big discussion in the Discord about this, so I'm kind of just giving my take on why I do think canonizations, we should treat them at least as infallible. There has been no, unlike the papal infallibility, which was infallibly defined as dogma at the First Vatican Council, it's kind of been more up to theologians to decide whether or not canonizations are, but it seems to me the majority of theologians, and it just seems that it's very presumptuous to assume otherwise, that they wouldn't be infallible, since the Pope is inviting the whole church to join in, and this is a big part of the faith. This is a huge part of the faith, is the saints. The saints exemplify these virtues, and so part of canonization is saying this is how we ought to live. It's pointing to these saints and saying these is acts that we should emulate. And of course, saints have made mistakes, don't get me wrong, but that kind of is this general principle that surrounds it, and so there does seem to be definitely a very heavy weight that should be attached to these things. Okay, here are some verses in the Bible that, I guess, affirm that we can honor, people, Protestants for some reason think you can't even honor good and valiant people even on earth. For example, Ecclesiasticus 44:1 says, this is the catechism here, it says, let us now praise men of renown and our fathers in their generation. Let us praise men of renown. I mean, it just makes sense. I think most people understand intuitively that people who have lived a good life we can look up to and respect and honor them. For behold, henceforth all generations shall call me blessed. Luke 1:48. And that was the Blessed Virgin Mary there speaking. And I think Protestants really should do some introspection. And this is what the Douay-Rheims Bible translation in their footnote to the verse, Luke 1:48, it says, Protestants should do some introspection and decide whether or not they've truly given the proper praise and proper honor to the Blessed Mary, so that truly what she's saying there, henceforth all generations shall call me blessed, does hold, it does obtain. It seems that Protestants really try to avoid her. In fact, even if you go to like a Protestant service on Mother's Day, they usually will talk about all manner of women in the Bible, but I don't think when I grew up Protestant, never heard one about the Virgin Mary. And that's because they've kind of rejected the Marian dogma of the Catholic Church. They define themselves by that. And St. Louis de Montfort says that is one of the signs of the reprobate. And the Virgin Mary herself says that all nations shall call me blessed. So I need a drink there. Okay, so how can we honor the saints? The Catechism asks. And there's 3 ways. First, by imitating their holy lives, as I mentioned. Second, by praying to them. And this one is going to be kind of more controversial with the Protestants again. According to the scriptures, we are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses. We are surrounded by the Church Triumphant, meaning the Church Triumphant can see us on earth, and that they are cheering us on, according to St. Paul, as we run this race of life. And I believe it was in James, the Epistle of James, it also says that very efficacious are the prayers of a righteous person. So the saints, they can see us, they can root for us, and they're also, their prayers are going to be the most efficacious because they're experiencing the beatific vision. They're perfect in heaven. And therefore their prayers are extremely efficacious. There is nothing that is going to hinder their communication with God. And for that reason, it's important to ask for their intercession. And the same way when I said that, I have my midterms coming up, can you guys, pray for me? We ask that of the saints, but it's like their prayers are much more powerful, much more poignant. If anyone has ever been in like a state of mortal sin, for example, they know that it can be very difficult to pray to God. Oftentimes when we are in states of sin, when we feel distant from God, it's like almost like a communication is having some issues there between us. Our conscience may have been nullified or become more numb to the voice of God. And so it's more difficult to hear what he has to say for us. However, if we ask for the saints' intercession, there's nothing, the saints can hear us. There's no like communication issues there. And the saints, they have this perfect, they're in perfect communion with God, obviously. And so they can intercede for us. And so oftentimes, when we are when we feel the most distant from God, those are the times to really ask for the intercession of the saints, because it can be the most difficult to hear the voice of God. And so through the intercession of the saints, we can ask, so basically through them, they can ask God for our requests. So that is one of the benefits of intercession of the saints. And we should all obviously do that. I obviously recommend everyone pray the rosary daily, or at least some, canonical prayer, like the rosary or the Angelus or something like that. And then third, the way we can honor the saints' lives is by showing respect to their relics and images. And I just wanted to read off here. I saw this in another site here, and I'll get into some of the effects of relics in a moment, because relics are more than just body parts of the saints. And it's more than just that. But first, I wanted to kind of explain how it is that we are honoring the saints through relics. And it's basically that we are affirming the doctrines of the Church by honoring relics. One, the belief in everlasting life. Those who obediently witness to Christ shall rise again. They are in heaven. We acknowledge the truth of the resurrection of the body. That this body part, or this relic of the saint, it doesn't have to be a body part. I'll explain the different kinds of relics. There's 3. The body of the saint is going to return to his soul in the new heavens and the new earth. 3, it's the doctrine of the splendor of the human body. We have dignity, this rejection of kind of Gnosticism, or this idea that matter is evil or something like that. And then 4, the belief in the special intercessory power of the saints, because we know that they're in heaven, they enjoy this special relationship with God. By reflecting on some relic, we can kind of remind ourselves of the life of the saint. And then 5, the truth of the closeness of the saints, because of our connection to the communion of saints as members of the Church Militant. If we are members of the Church Militant, then we are part of the body of the Church, and the Church Triumphant are too part of the body of the Church. And just in the same way that we are in a physical proximity to this relic of the saint, there's some physical connection to the saint when he was here on earth, so too does it remind us that we have the spiritual proximity to the saints that are in heaven. Even if we can't see them or sense them with our five senses, that doesn't mean that they're not there. And so those are the five kind of doctrines of the church that are exemplified when we honor relics. And so the Catechism says, why do we honor relics? And it says we honor relics because they are the bodies of the saints and objects which connect the saints to our Lord. And there are three kinds of relics. The first is called a first-class relic, and that's like a actual body part of the saint, like a bone of the apostles, or something like that. There's second-class relics, which are articles of clothing or things that they have touched, the saints has used. For example, if the saint has the wood of the cross, for example, and then a third-class relic is some relic that is touched or come in contact with a first-class relic. And those are the three kinds of relics. I'm trying to make sure I didn't butcher that. Yes, okay. So yeah, those are the three kinds of relics. And the relics must be encased in order for them to be, according to the church canonical rules, the relics must be encased. They can't be just freely exposed, and it's very difficult for any new relics to be confirmed. One of the critiques of the Protestant reformers was that these relics were fake and gay because there was so many of them. Later studies have indicated that this is in fact not true. For example, they said that there's enough pieces of the wooden cross to form a worship. However, someone in the 1870s documented all the pieces of the wooden cross and found it would only about, if you measure the actual volume, it will only compose about 1/3 of the cross, which is the scandal there is the fact that we don't have the whole cross. We're missing parts of it, even though the Crusaders were able to uncover the cross at Calvary when they took Jerusalem in the First Crusades. Other relics, for example, the bones of the apostles, Martin Luther is there's 24 different burial sites of the apostles. Well, clearly this is fake because there's only 12 apostles. Well, actually, there's 16 apostles if you count Philip and Paul and Barnabas. But notwithstanding, the bones of the apostles are not kept in one place. They might have the skull in one area, and then they would transport the other parts of the apostles to other areas because they were sacred things. These were relics. These are things that people use to help to honor the saints. And I'm going to be very clear here that they're not magical. And we'll get into this with the sacramentals as well. We're not talking about magic here. However, relics of the saints have been known to be associated with miracles and to distribute grace and to exorcise even demons. Let's see, is it mentioned this in the Catechism? No, but there are some other parts in the Council of Trent explicitly says this. So, doesn't wood disintegrate? That's why the relics have to be kind of enclosed so that they're not exposed to the elements, so that they don't disintegrate, and they're kind of embalmed, so to speak. Some of them literally embalmed, like the corpses of saints. Other ones kind of more metaphorically so. But basically, the basic idea behind relics and sacramentals is it combines matter and spirit. Basically, the idea is that God uses matter, and this is important, listen carefully, God uses matter as the occasion to perform miracles. There's nothing special in the matter itself. This is not some magical Harry Potter spooky stuff going on, but rather it is the occasion of the matter that God is using to distribute grace, to exorcise demons, and to work miracles, like I said. And this is due, the effects are just kind of worked through the occasion of matter, but they're due for sacramentals, due to the prayers of the church, and in relics, due to the merits of the saints. And basically, the idea is that these saints have lived an exemplary life. They've lived a very holy life, and so their bodies are these temples of the Holy Trinity. They're these temples of the Holy Ghost. And we oftentimes kind of disassociate the soul and the body, and I've brought this up many times. This is the heresy of Christian dualism. And it's a heresy for a reason. The soul and the body are one substance. They are inseparable, except by virtue of the miracle when we die and our soul is conjoined with God in the beatific vision, but this is not the natural state of the things. And that is why our bodies have to resurrect again at the last day, at the general judgment. The saints, therefore, their bodies are themselves going to be blessed by God. They are these temples of the Trinity, temples of the Holy Ghost, and therefore they're been blessed by God. And so, of course, then the saint is going to experience, the power to work exorcisms, the power to work miracles, etc. And after he dies, of course, then the body no longer has that power to do that, because he's no longer in his body. However, God has been so generous in the fact that if we show honor and we venerate, we have these pious sentiments, as we honor and venerate some relic, then the blessings that God had bestowed on the saint, he extends them to us. And it is through this object of the relic that is kind of like the mode by which we now transfer these blessings to ourselves. We have now been able to share in the blessings of God that he originally had just intended for the saints, the power to work miracles, exorcise demons, etc. He extends that to us, so that now we can have, like I said, empower miracles or exorcise demons and these very spiritually efficacious things. And so why do we use matter? Why is that the occasion? And there's a lot of biblical precedent for this. For example, when Jesus healed the eyes of a blind man, he spit on mud. The scriptures say he spit on mud and then he applied it to their eyes, which is kind of a gross imagery to maybe the modern man. But is there anything magical about the mud? No, absolutely not. It was just through the mud. This was the occasion for which God was going to work this miracle. Again, another example is when Elisha told Nahum to wash in the Jordan River 7 times to be cleansed of leprosy. Nothing magical about the Jordan River. And the reason why I bring this up is because Protestants often accuse Catholics of being very superstitious. And for that reason, Catholics have often avoided venerating relics or having sacramentals in order to move in the opposite direction, move too far. They think they're too cultured or what have you. And so there's been a real lack of emphasis there. And so I'm kind of trying to give it the right, proper interpretation. The relics, sacramentals are very important, but they're not it's not in and of themselves. They don't have special magical powers or functions. They're not lucky charms. And so why did God decide to do this? Well, we're sensible human beings. We learn through matter. We aren't just purely intellectual. The way we experience the world, the way we come to know and grasp things is through our perception of material objects. Obviously, we ourselves are not independent of matter, and spirit are not independent in us. Like I said, we're one substance. God also created matter, so it's good. It's made intelligibly. There's some form to it. All matter has form, according to Aristotelian metaphysics. So it all is intelligible, and therefore it glorifies God. It has being. So of course God might want to work through it for that reason. And then of course, the reason that we are self-conscious is only because of a synthesis of our experiences. The reason why I think about, again, who am I? Who is anime rightist? Is through a synthesis of my various life experiences, various thoughts. And thoughts are not going to be as much the relate to matter, but our experiences living out in nature and our perceptions of the empirical world do in fact shape, who we think of ourselves as. And so it makes sense that God is going to work through these modes that we are often accustomed with. And so I think it's, it makes sense that that's why he uses it for sacraments and also sacramentals and relics. All right. Here are some verses in the Bible explicitly about relics. For example, there was a man who came in contact with the bones of Elisha in 2 Kings, and he was healed. He was actually risen from death into new life, like Lazarus. Other examples is like the bones of Joseph, which were taken by the Israelites after they fled Egypt when they were living in bondage to Pharaoh. There's the example of the woman with a hemorrhage. She had some menstrual issue, and that was healed by just touching Jesus' garment. So is the garment of Jesus magical? No, but it was just through the garment that God decided to work this miracle based on the faith of the woman. Here are some really great examples that are just very explicit about this. Acts 19:11-12, and this is the quote here, "And God wrought by the hand of Paul more than common miracles, so that even there were brought from his body to the sick handkerchiefs and aprons, and the diseases departed from them, and the wicked spirits went out of them." And so there we see second-class relics, basically aprons, handkerchiefs, and they were causing miracles. Acts 5:15 is kind of very similar. "And so as much as they brought forth the sick into the streets and laid them on beds and couches, that when Peter came, his shadow at least might overshadow any of them, and they might be delivered from their infirmities." And the very shadow was St. Peter. St. Peter was imbued with so much grace, so much holiness, that his very shadow, God could work miracles through it. He allowed people to share in the merits of St. Peter through his very shadow, which is very telling about the spiritual authority of St. Peter from even the earliest days. And then from the early church, you have examples like Polycarp. St. Polycarp took off his garments before he was about to be martyred so that the faithful could have it as relics. St. Jerome, here's a quote from him. He said that we do not worship, we do not adore, for fear that we should bow down to the Creator, or rather the creature, rather than to the Creator, but we venerate the relics of the martyrs in order to better adore Him whose martyrs they are. In other words, they have to point to God. They point us to God. And that is exactly the kind of sentiment, the disposition that it should inspire in us when we visit relics. In every altar, well, I guess after the Second Vatican Council, I think they did away with this requirement, but at least before that, every altar, it was required that they have a relic, a first-class relic, underneath it. And that is why at the prayers at the foot of the altar, the priest says, "Blessed be the relic of the saint who lies here." I forget the exact wording. He says it quietly, though, as he's approaching the altar, and that's why he kisses the altar. That is why even if there's an altar that doesn't have the Blessed Sacrament, we should still kind of bow to it. If it has the Blessed Sacrament, you should genuflect, but if it doesn't have the Blessed Sacrament, you should still bow to the altar, because it has the relic of the saint. And so, if you, sometimes the relics are brought out so that people can venerate them. Otherwise, you have to kind of go to probably more European countries. I think they have a lot more relics than American countries. I've never actually seen, like, I think only like one time I've seen like that happen. It was at the end of some service. They brought in some relic, and then they people lined up at the altar rail, and they had them kiss the relic, and they brought it through for everyone. It was a cool ceremony. I see we're almost out of time, but I'm just gonna keep going. Sacramentals are not gonna take too long, hopefully. Sacramentals are kind of the same idea, that they obtain for us certain favors from God. 3 favors to be exact. Again, they can help to exorcise demons. They obtain for us actual graces, which are very different than sacramental graces, sanctifying grace rather. And then they also can procure for us certain temporal benefits. In fact, it can procure for us miracles, but though usually it's just temporal benefits like health, or the blessings of the saints, rather the blessings of the throats at Saint Blaise's day or something like that. I think that's how you say that saint's name. Like something of that sort. It's supposed to be like a temporal healing of people's throats. And basically, the sacramental is asking that the prayers of the church, be that we offer to God for supplication, be extended to us. The effect of these prayers be extended to us through these what are called sacramentals, and there are various kinds. They're actually, let's see. let's see here. I'm going to make sure I want to stick with the catechism. I don't want to say anything wrong here. Yeah, there are 3 kinds of sacramentals. The first is blessings that are given by priests and bishops. And they often give the blessing with holy water. The second is exorcisms against evil spirits. The exorcism is in itself a sacramental. And then the third is blessed objects of devotion. And blessed object of devotion would be something that is received, what you might call the a constitutive blessing of the saint, of a priest or bishop. For example, a sacramental might be like the palm branches they use on Palm Sunday. It's blessed by the priest. It's used for some devotion, and therefore it is a sacramental. You don't want to just throw it away when you get home. I remember in the Discord that was a matter of concern because some people were unaware of that. But yes, and the reason why they're called sacramentals, which are very different than sacraments. We finished talking about the 7 sacraments. The 7 sacraments were established by Christ. The sacramentals are established by the church. They're just material things that the church has given some. It says that priests and bishops should bless in order to be, again, the occasion through which God works certain graces and what have you. And the reason why they're called sacramentals is just because they're used in the liturgy of sacraments, like holy water. Holy water is a great example of a sacramental, and you can even read in the Old Testament, in Numbers, it states that that priests should take holy water as well as dust from the floor of the tabernacles and put it into the water. That's from Numbers 5:17. So these examples kind of are, you can even find them in the Old Testament. Here is a scapular. That is why I was picking at my neck. As I was getting the scapular here, I was initiated maybe 3 or so years ago. It's been a while since I've been wearing this. I wear it in basically every single day. And the only times I take it off for a shower. And it inspires in me every time I, go to take a shower, I take it off and put it back on. And it reminds me, it inspires in me pious sentiments insofar as I remember the fact that the Blessed Virgin Mary is looking out for me. And it is through kind of this, these pious sentiments that is uniting myself with the prayers of the church, and therefore through that I can receive certain benefits, i.e. or e.g. actual graces, etc. Actual graces, by the way, if you forgot, I did this a while back, this lesson on grace. Actual graces are things that are external. Sanctifying grace is internal to the soul and revolutionizes it basically. It fundamentally transforms the way the soul thinks. It kind of helps to unite it again back with God. Helps to clear away some of the propensity. We have this propensity to prefer inclination and the pleasures of the flesh to the will of God, but it helps to kind of invert that so that the will of God takes precedent. It helps to make us more autonomous individuals so that the part of us that is divine, so to speak, the intellect, the immaterial part of us can shine through. Whereas an actual grace is something kind of pushes on the outside, like our conscience. It pushes us to do the right thing. So it gives actual graces. For example, this is given to, it says right here, at the Mount, Carmel, to St. Simon's Stock in 1251, Our Lady, Mount Carmel, gave it to him as a sign of salvation, the scapular, and she said, "Whosoever dies clothed in this scapular shall not suffer eternal fire." That doesn't mean that anyone who wears the scapular, if they live a life of hedonism and of mortal sin, are going to be given some last chances to convert necessarily, or will be saved nonetheless. That's not what it's saying. It's saying those who devoutly wear this, and it reminds them of the blessings of Our Lady can be delivered. That's kind of like one of the benefits of it. So let me just put that back there. But yes, scapulars are great things to be initiated in. I have icons as well. And these things are what we'd call, there are 2 kinds of blessings that a priest can give, invocative and constitutive. An invocative blessing is given to something like a home, a car. It's basically just asking for the blessings of God. Whereas a constitutive blessing is setting this aside as an object of devotion. It's constituting it. The constitution of the matter is now kind of changing from just something of purely material concern to something of religious use and import. Crucifixes, chalices, churches, icons, the scapular, holy water. That would be when it's blessed by the priest, it's kind of a constituted blessing. And it's at this blessing that the church is basically extending the prayers at every mass, the prayers of the church and her participants, and basically saying that the benefits of those prayers now are going to be applied to you through the occasion of certain sacramentals. And rather as something like an invocated blessing, again, it does ask for God's favor, but these are things that are going to be like cars, or like I had my car blessed, for example. I sold that car and I wish I didn't, because that was a really good car, the best car I've ever had. I got pulled over like twice. Both times I got out. My mom got pulled over once, and the cop let her off. So I think I'm not trying to be superstitious about this, but I do think that some of these temporal benefits were through the occasion of using this material good. But again, these things have to go together. The sacramental inspires us pious sentiments, which allows it kind of unlocks the prayers of the church for these temporal blessings, and it's just through this material object that's kind of the occasion of that. And unlike sacraments, sacraments are signs or symbols that point to things, but they also accomplish what they point. For example, the laver of regeneration, the waters used in baptism, accomplishes what it signifies. Baptism signifies new birth. It signifies washing of the way of sin, expiation of sin. And it accomplishes that. You can baptize a baby. The baby doesn't have to be aware of it at all, and it will accomplish that effect because Christ instituted it. Whereas if you dip your hand in holy water and cross yourself, make the sign of the cross, that is, of course, a sign of our baptism. It reminds us of our baptism, but in and of itself, it has no effect. It just points us to something, but it doesn't accomplish what it signifies. It just points us to it, and so long as it points us to this thing, and then we recollect that thing, whatever it might be, whatever pious thing it might be, then we can unlock the blessings from the church. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. I'm kind of setting this up to make it clear that these things are not objects of superstition. They're not good luck charms. I do not have an icon in my room simply because I think it's going to, if I get like apostatize, then the evil demons will still leave me alone. That's not how it works. Obviously, the icon is something that, it's the one right here. I got it recently. I had it blessed by a Melkite priest. It was actually a really cool ceremony. I thought it'd be, because usually the Latin priests are kind of quick with these things. They kind of just throw some holy water on, boo, 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 say some Latin. But the priest actually went through he had a whole book he was going through. It was pretty cool. Because the Melkites used the vernacular, I understood what he was saying, and it was like the icon actually has the power, or rather, through the occasion of the icon, the demons can be and evil forces can be vanquished within the vicinity, which is kind of cool. But again, this is through the occasion of the icon. It's not like the icon has some magical power. So yes, these are objects of devotion that we should take advantage of as Catholics. We shouldn't just let them go by in vain. These are things that can help us procure both our salvation in terms of just actual graces. Obviously, I think most people aren't demon-possessed, but if you're worried about demonic influence, because it's real. Demonic influence is real. If you talk to anyone who's an exorcist, and in order to be an exorcist, a priest, you either have to be a bishop. All bishops are exorcists, or you have to be a priest that has been given the role of exorcist by your diocesan bishop. If you listen to interviews from them, it's very clear that there's a demonic forces. They have quite the extent to which they invade our lives is something to be taken seriously. Oftentimes we are distracted when we pray. Some of these times the distractions are just purely flesh-based. For me at least, I know it's easy to get distracted while I pray. I think some of these distractions might just be like hunger or something that's just based in the flesh. Other distractions are in fact, according to the Catechism, based on certain evil forces. Distractions like things telling you that prayer doesn't matter, or prayer is ineffective, or you're just you're not saying anything real, you're just repeating the same thing over and over again. Things little thoughts like these that come into your mind, these are things that come from
evil forces or Satan or from demons or what have you. And so that is why it's good to have things like sacramentals so that the effects of them can help to ward these things off. Let's see, is there anything else here I wanted to... Yeah, so here's the chief effects. Actual grace, the forgiveness of venial sin. Oh, I forgot to mention that one. They forgive venial sin as well. So when you dip your fingers in holy water and cross yourself, according to St. Thomas Aquinas, you are basically reminding of yourself of these very pious things, and therefore implicitly, by engaging in certain these acts, by the use of sacramentals, we are acknowledging God as our creator and acknowledging that we are sinful, and therefore we're implicitly asking for forgiveness from God, and therefore we will be absolved through these pious acts. So yeah, I forgot to mention that. It also helps to forgive venial sin, which is good. Third, the remission of temporal punishment. Oh, that's another one I forgot to mention. It's a good thing I went back to read the Catechism. Again, temporal punishment, there's two types of punishment. There's guilt, and then there's punishment. There's two types. There's the eternal punishment for sin, which we have if we commit mortal sin or like aboriginal sin, and that type of punishment can only be expiated by the merits of Jesus Christ, won for us on the cross, because it requires infinite merit to expiate that. But the temporal punishment, which is to say, because we affect, the moral order on earth. There's the moral order on earth, which is to say the way we interact with people. We have certain moral obligations and duties to them. But we also have obligations, of course, to God, mainly to obey the moral law. And the moral law is kind of compounded twice almost. The moral law exists in part because we are rational. I would have to do like a whole probably segment on like the genesis of the moral law, but you can go back to my conversation with Ruby Space if you're actually interested in that. But in any case, it comes from kind of just the fact that we're rational beings and interact with each other in a society, a social society. There is certain going to be, because of the issues of scarcity and conflict and differences of inclination, differences of opinion, we therefore need some moral law to order our pursuit of happiness, so that it is in correspondence with right reason and with nature, so that everything can be in harmony. Now, God, of course, is the one who establishes, and therefore says that this is also his law, and therefore committing it is a sin against God, and it's also then a sin against the natural order as well. So the sin is kind of compounded, and so there's always going to be a temporal effect, or temporal punishment incurred, as well as an eternal one. And these ones are going to be expiated either through certain penances, indulgences, or purgatory. Purgation is going to be like the final way that you can be expiated that temporal punishment. So another way to help to reduce time in purgatory is through sacramentals. Venerating sacramentals, using sacramentals in worship, holy water, praying before crucifixes, things of this sort, these very holy things, can help to reduce your time there. And then finally, protection from evil spirits. Or rather, that's the fifth. The fifth promise is protection from evil spirits, like I mentioned. And then the one I skipped is health of body and material blessings. There is a temporal aspect to it in terms of like temporal blessings that come with these things. Though it's by no means guaranteed. And again, you shouldn't treat these as like good luck charms like they do in like Shintoism or Buddhism or something like that. Just because you have a rosary hanging in your windshield or your car was blessed does not mean you're not going to get in an accident, okay? That doesn't mean you can drive recklessly. But it does mean that, if your priest is given it an invocated blessing, the priest has basically extended the prayers of the church to your car so that it can become an occasion through which God can work his blessings out. And that certainly has been the case for me. I noticed the car that was blessed, which now belongs to my brother, is doing a lot better than the car that wasn't, which is my current car. So I need to get my car blessed. Anything else I wanted to say? Here's the part on superstition. The church very strongly condemns that. We should make use of the sacramentals with faith and devotion and never make them objects of superstition. Sacramentals become objects of superstition when they are considered good luck charms or when they are thought to produce effects apart from the prayers of the church. It's through the prayers of the church that the effect is merited for sacramentals, and the object is only merely the occasion or the mode through which we receive these blessings that the church has won for us through her prayers and from the devotion they inspire. So that's very true. The prayers of the church and the devotion. If you have a sacramental, but you don't really think about it, it doesn't inspire you any pious sentiments, then you're not really going to receive any graces from it. But yes, the ashes, the candles, palms, crucifixes, medals, rosaries, scapulars, images of our Lord, the Blessed Virgin Mary, these are all examples the Catechism gives of sacramentals you can use today in your home. I saw Oswald said that his firearms were blessed by a priest. Again, that would be an invocated blessing, since firearms are not used for religious ceremonies or for like some object of devotion, but it's a kind of hopefully then that kind of gives it an air of sanctity. So whenever Oswald is at the firing range, he reminds himself he's in the army of God, the church militant on earth, or something of that sort, and through it procures for him certain temporal blessings. And hopefully the firearms will be used for good purposes for the kingdom of heaven. Maybe another crusade will be called or something to that effect. Let's see, is there anything else here? Kind of didn't go in order, so that is why I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything. But I think I covered everything. I did skip one thing I realized, and that is there are 7 kinds of saints. I wanted to remind people of that. True, yeah. Blessed guns, your aim is much more accurate now, I'm sure. Plus 10 damage. So there are 7 kinds of saints. There are the Queen of Saints, obviously the Blessed Virgin Mary, which is a saint we all should venerate and honor. There are also general classes of saints. The 7 general classes of saints are apostles, martyrs, popes, confessors who are bishops, confessors who are not bishops, virgins, basically nuns, and women who are not virgins, women who are not nuns, who are also saints. Those are the 7 categories of saints, and the reason why the church has these categories, it kind of compartmentalizes them, is so that you can think about which category would apply to me. And so then you can kind of find saints that are of a similar state of life as you, and you can learn about their life and imitate their life. The church has so many saints to offer. They have saints who are shoemakers, saints who are I'm trying to think of other good examples here. They have saints who are hermits, saints who are ascetics, saints who are priests, monks, nuns. So regardless of wherever your state of life is, you can find a saint or a general class of saints that you can especially ask for their intercession. And so we have patron saints, and you can especially study their life so that you can come to know who they are and how they please God, so that you can better please God yourself. And so I think that'll wrap things up there. So hopefully you learned something new. The main takeaway there is that sacramentals are not objects of superstition. They are occasion to miracles, occasion to grace, occasion to temporal blessings, as well as to the remission and forgiveness of venial sin and temporal punishment. Relics as well are the occasion of these things. But the most important thing is that your disposition is there, and it's the prayers of the church that are responsible for the miracle. It's just kind of the mode through which these things are procured is the material object. But yes, may it inspire you in pious sentiments, the various sacramentals of the church. Make sure that when you use them, you kiss them before you use them to show them proper reverence. Since they were blessed, if you see an altar with the relics of a saint, make sure you bow, give it a deep bow. If you are if you're using holy water to cross yourself, yes, that is, those are ways in which you can remind yourself of the fact that these are sacramentals. Oh, and make sure you don't throw them away. That was the one thing. I keep forgetting to say that. I was like, there's something I'm missing. Don't throw them away in the trash can. If you need to get rid of a sacramental, burn it or bury it. Make sure you do one of the two things. That is kind of the way the church has always dealt with sacred things, sacred objects of devotion. So, that's all for tonight. I thank you guys so much for listening. I hope, let me see if you guys have any questions here. I hope you guys can gain something from this, because this is very very concrete. Sometimes we talk about things on the show that are more philosophical or abstract, but tonight we're talking about things that are very concrete: scapulars, rosaries, things of this sort. Just getting the blessings of from priests. These are things you can do Sunday at church. After Mass, ask the priest to bless your rosary. Now it's a sacramental. So these are things that you can participate in and should participate in. Okay. I'm now going to be transitioning into the part of the show where I see what you guys have to say. So if you have questions about tonight's program, or if you have your own thoughts, or have questions about something else kind of related to theology, or maybe even just general questions about anime or any other subject I'm interested in, feel free to ask. The entropy link is available to everyone here. Man, we're missing the Bean Dip Groiper tonight. I just realized that. Oh no, he is there. Never mind. He says he just didn't donate, but that's okay. Sorry, he donated so much, it's not an issue. I thought maybe he wasn't watching the show. I was like, what? But he's here. Okay, Oswald, thank you very much, sir. Very generous. Really appreciate it, man. He says, I pulled this out of my grandmother's hospice care fund to donate to you. Well, I mean, your grandma's time's already limited, so might as well use the money. No, I'm just kidding. Or no, you're saying a fund for the hospice care. So it's in case your grandma goes to hospice, or is she in hospice now? And that's what you're paying for. Any case, don't feel the need to take out of your family budget, but I appreciate it. Medical bills are so expensive, man. They really are. They really do. The insurance companies and the hospitals are really kind of jack up prices, but I appreciate the donation nonetheless. I hope your grandma's okay, and I hope she doesn't go to hospice. And if she is there, I don't know. I'm not sure to what extent this guy's joking, but hopefully she's doing good, man. But in any case, thank you so much for the donation. I really appreciate it. But yeah, I'm in a health econ class, and it's kind of blackpilling just for how like expensive things are. And it's not even like based on quality. Like they showed the variance in prices. Even within hospitals, the prices vary. It's like, oh, this surgery could cost only $100, or it could cost $10,000, depending on which doctor you get. And it's like, wow, okay, that explains why everything is so expensive. And a lot of that has to do with a lack of competition. There's a lot of barriers of entry. The way that prices are determined is between negotiations between insurance companies and hospitals oftentimes have monopoly power. Sometimes the insurance company has more power, but healthcare is complicated. It's a very complicated thing. Not really relevant to the super chat, but it just reminded me of that. But don't feel the need to donate if it's going to take out of your grandma's hospice care. Don't feel pressure, okay? But I appreciate the donation nonetheless, Oswald. It's good to see you, buddy. We gotta hang out sometime. Oswald's a great guy. And hopefully I'll be able to play War Thunder with him and Nasuno tonight. Nasuno, he also donated. Thank you very much, sir. Wow, very generous tonight, you two. Very nice. I really appreciate it. Very generous super chats from you guys. Nasuno says, perennialism, based or cringe? Great question. A lot to talk about there. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any questions, because I'm going to go on a long tangent to answer that. You did such a generous donation. I need to give you a very long and detailed explanation. But first, I need to just make sure I don't miss anything in the chat here. That might be a shorter question, but I will answer that one. Don't worry. Okay, Tuna says, anime rightist, is Jesus and God the same person, two different people, or the same yet different at the same time? That's a great question about the Trinity and the hypostatic union between God and man. There are three persons of the Trinity: the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. There is only one God. They all share the essence of the divine self. They're all simple, immutable. simple, immutable, eternal, immaterial, all the attributes of God, omnipotent, omnipotent, omnipresent, all the attributes you can predicate to God. All three persons share them equally. They all therefore share in the essence of God, but the three divine persons are different, but they're not distinct, I think is the way that they would say it. There's a difference between them in the sense that there's these, what's called a subsisting relation. There's these subsisting relations between the various members of the Trinity. For example, the analogy or the way that we often think of it is the Father is like the person of God, the Son is the intellect, and the Father, who knows that he is in own intellect, has a certain love for the intellect, and that is the Holy Ghost, and the intellect is the Logos or Christ, or God the Son. And so the way you can see this, the way the relation there is one of procession. The Father proceeds from the Son. There's spiration. The Holy Spirit, or the love the Father has, proceeds from both the Father and the Son. There is a filial relation, and then there's a paternal relation with the Father. And those are the four relations Aquinas gives. I forget if he has a certain name for it. I forget what it was, but he gives these four relations, and he says that the three of them are in contradiction with each other, particularly the ability to beget, or to the fact that Jesus proceeds from the Father, the spiration of the Holy Ghost, and the paternity of the Father. Those three things, I think, are in conflict, basically, and therefore there's a difference. But there isn't a distinction, and distinction requires that there's unique essence, I believe, in Aristotelian philosophy, and so there's a difference without a distinction. Or I think that's the way they say it. And so yes, Jesus is God, the Holy Spirit is God, and the God the Father is God. It's true. They all share the essence of God. They're just three different persons. The difference between them being one of a subsisting relation, basically kind of the way that God relates to himself. There's some differences there. It's very complicated, and we'll never fully grasp the Trinity. It's going to always remain a mystery. I went into a little more detail about it on a different show. You can go on YouTube and look that one up. It seems you're kind of asking about Jesus. Jesus is not he is the Logos, but Jesus is like the incarnate Logos. And so that also gets in the issue of the hypostatic union, which is basically Jesus, which is the third person of the Trinity, or the second person of the Trinity. He shares the substance with man, meaning now he has two natures. He has the divine nature and the human nature. And the two natures are not in conflict with each other. The human nature is one of materiality, it exists space and time. The divine nature is one of perfection. And the two are conjoined in Christ. He is the incarnate form of that. There's a lot of Christology that has gone into like thinking about the hypostatic union. And there's one, oh man, I forget the name of it. Maybe someone in chat knows, but there's a very specific technical term for the idea that Christ actually limited the divine nature so that he could take on the human nature in his incarnation, which is why the miracles he does is through the God the Father, and why he says the Father is greater than I, not because he isn't God, but rather just because he's limited the divine nature of himself. And that's part of him being divine, is the fact that he could limit his own nature. He could kind of bookmark it, almost, in a sense. If he wasn't able to do that, then is he really omnipotent? Because certainly I might have the power to read, I have the ability to read, but sometimes I choose not to read. Sometimes I might look at a book and just not read. I don't want to. So I have the power to limit my own self, and so then God too, since he is all perfections, he would have that ability as well. So yes, Jesus is God, but we have to be very careful with that. We would say that he is God with remainder, because it isn't the case that the Godhead became transmortified into Christ, and heaven isn't vacant, but rather the second person of the Trinity becomes incarnate, shares a substance with man, and therefore shares a substance with man and therefore takes on human tendencies, but has now two natures, human and a divine. It's very complicated, and it's nothing that we're going to be able to fully grasp completely. It's something we have to take on faith to some extent. And by person, when we say the person of the Trinity, Aquinas defines that as someone with an intellect and a unique substance with an intellect, I believe is the way he defines it. And so the three persons of the Trinity have their own, I guess you could say, like these, like I said, there's this subsisting relation, and so they have their own kind of roles that come from this relation. I think Aquinas calls this, I was reading a book on this. Maybe I'll do a show on it or something. I have to like refresh, but it's like, there's five, like I said, there's four subsisting relations. There's five, like, I guess you could say, acts, that the Trinity, performs, the various members, and it's the exact same as the four relations, except there's one more, which is, I think, eternal or something like that. And basically all of them can be seen in some way to relate to how the Trinity, the economic Trinity is how the Trinity relates to us. And these various relations of the Trinity kind of correspond. For example, obviously the Son, he begets from the Father in the sense that it's like the intellect. The way we think about it is like, just as the mind thinks, we produce thought. The Father produced thoughts, he begets the Son. And so in the same sense, that the Son becomes like incarnate, and he says, I am, the Son of God. And that's kind of like the way God relates to us. Jesus relates to us now as the Son. The best analogy I've heard of the Trinity is, imagine if you went like back in time, twice. And so then now, let's say, like at this moment, like a future self went back in time, and now there's another me, another Animaritis. I'm Animaritis 1, there's Animaritis 2, and then let's say another me from the past or something went forward in time. So now there's three Animaritis. They each have their own individual minds, rational minds, they have individuated substances in a certain sense. They're three unique persons, but we all share the same essence. We're all Animaritis. All the essential qualities of Animaritis, wearing sweaters, ties. And that's not really an essential quality, but in fact, Animaritis isn't an essence. The essence would be human, but all analogies are prone to imperfection, but we all share the same essence of human. And assuming I was the only human, then we'd all share the same essence exclusively. And since God is eternal, you could think of it as like, there's all the three persons of God have existed at all times in all places, or at all times always, because God extends eternally both forward and backwards. He is timeless. So hopefully that gave you some answer. I know, yeah, perennial traditionalism is in the intro, but I just want to respond to it in depth. I was seeing if you guys had any more questions. It doesn't look like it. Okay. So with that, without further ado then, I'll respond to the Suno's point here. Yeah, I know, I see that the time is getting late. I'll try to speed things up so that we can watch the anime and then we can play War Thunder. But perennial traditionalism. Well, one, perennialism is not the same as perennial traditionalism. Perennialism is a aspect of branch of philosophy. Usually it is seen as originating from Aldous Huxley, and it's not the exact same as perennial traditionalism. Perennialism has some similar notions about the fact that the Godhead is the unmanifested, the unmanifested principle from which all manifested principles derive themselves. Godhead is that's like how they see it. It is absolute, the only thing that has absolute being. Everything else that has being in form, the form being like something that's intelligible, has some principle that governs it. It derives itself ultimately from God. God is the progenitor of all order and all form. He is this unmanifested principle. That is like an idea. Perennialism, there's some other concepts. I don't know a whole lot about perennialism as a philosophy, independent of perennial traditionalism. But it's different. Which is why I'm kind of nitpicking here. But perennial traditionalism is in the intro because the perennial traditional writers reneging on Fridtjof Schuon and Julius Evola to some extent. He's kind of in there. They've very much influenced me to be more right-wing and reactionary. Certainly have influenced me on my thoughts about the transcendent unity of various religions, the caste system, the necessity of hierarchy in societies, the need for a society that is based on spiritual authority. These are things that they talk about. René Guénon talks about. There are even things about alchemy or astrology. This has been very influential on me. Basically, without them, I wouldn't be reactionary. I have somewhat of an idiosyncratic spin on perennial traditionalism insofar as I guess I should explain what perennial traditionalism is in its pure form first. Which is why it's not exactly possible for me to say it's based or cringe, because parts of it are very based, parts on caste system and what have you, but other parts are not as based. And the perennial traditionalism basically says perennial, meaning year by year. For example, like a perennial flower is a flower that comes back year by year. And the perennial traditionalism says that the essence of God is manifested in various religions, and basically it's different religions take different forms of the essential properties of God or religion that point us to that. So they share this esoteric, it's the way they often refer to it, as esoteric quality. They have all the same, they see the same esotericism in which they see God in the same way, and it's through these it's called exoteric rites that they lead people to the same understanding of God. For example, in Hinduism, even if it seems like a very pantheistic religion, which was my understanding until I started reading more of the writers had to say, and I think their analysis is very poignant here, is they say that actually the Hindus believe that there's something called Atma. Atma is like the Godhead, it is absolute, and then it begins to manifest itself in Brahma. Brahma is the creator, and then the creator can further divide himself into kind of what you said, subsets, or these principles that are extended throughout humanity, and then they kind of become incarnates like avatars. That's what they're called, avataras. And that's very kind of a similar, I use similar very loosely here. And let me say, this is what they say. If you don't buy it, I understand where you're coming from. I myself don't buy a lot of what they have to say. But I'm just explaining what perennial traditionalism is. They say that like this is very similar to the notion of Christ. Christ is the incarnate logos. He is the full incarnate logos, whereas maybe some of their incarnate deities are not fully there, but they're like principles of God that are not fully incarnate or something like that, or not fully God. The same would be like Shintoism is probably the one I've studied the most of. They have the Minakanushi no Kami, the God at the center of heaven. He is the only God that engenders himself. He's like the unmoved mover. And it is through the rites of these various religions, particularly prayer, beauty, truth, and virtue, that we come to know God. This is something that all religions share. And just as various religions have various people groups have various languages, and just as various people groups are very different. This is the one thing that perennial traditionalism gets very correct, is that people are different, and meaningfully so. Fridtjof Schuon once said, Aryan is not a Mongoloid is not a Semite. People are different. People live in different time periods. The Kali Yuga is very different than the Kali, I forget the other ones. But, or if you don't, like, that's just the Hindu cosmology. If the different time periods in history are very different than other time periods, and so God basically presents, or the essential property of religion manifests itself differently to different people based on their mental conditions and environmental circumstances. The laws of God, and so then there's like two traditions kind of that the perennial traditionalists recognize. One is what's called the Sophia Perennis, the internal wisdom, which is this esoteric character, which is these ideas, these eternal truths that are immutable, that undergird all religions. And then there's also the various traditions of religions themselves. For example, in Catholicism, traditions of like the deposit of faith, everything Jesus passed down, those are traditions as well. Shinto has their traditions, Buddhism has their traditions, etc. And so they would say that these religions are all there to help bring these various people groups to heaven the way that they're best suited for it. These religions are best adapted to the needs of these people. And so these exoteric differences that we see between religions are there for some reason. For example, they would say that in Christianity, the reason why we say that we are the true religion is because that way our followers wouldn't give into religious pluralism, which would be prejudicial to choosing an individual religion, which is very necessary for salvation. That being said, they wouldn't say that there is one true religion. They would say that all religions are essentially true. These exoteric differences are relative. That is what they argue. That is cringe, and I disagree, obviously. I don't think I can be a good Catholic and communion with Rome and believe that. I also don't think I can be a good Catholic and communion in Rome and think that Catholicism isn't going to be a religion that can appeal to other people groups. Though perhaps the rites of the Catholic faith that appeal to them is going to have to assimilate certain aspects of their own religion into it, the same way that the East is very different than the West. Eastern Catholicism is different than Western Catholicism in terms of the rites, disciplinary practices, these things of that sort. Perhaps a Catholicism that would be able to convert all of Japan would have to be one that would incorporate some of the good things of Shintoism, perhaps the things that the perennial traditionalists call esoteric, or they would say part of this Sophia Perennis. So that is my idiosyncratic kind of version of it. But yeah, I disagree that that's kind of. And then so they would also say like, oh, the reason why Jewish people think that they're the true religion is, or that they're the chosen people, is for the same reason. That it like wards against religious pluralism. It's very like kind of all these exoteric things are there to help point to something esoteric, but they really don't have value in themselves. That's kind of how they would say it, but which is, yeah, again, I don't agree with that. I think I can be in good faith a Catholic and believe that as things, because the Catholic Church explicitly doesn't teach them. Obviously, they would say, well, the Catholic faith can't teach about these things. These are metaphysical doctrines. The Catholic faith is limited to only those things which concern the Holy Roman Empire or the Roman Empire, and theology on the exoteric level. So they come at these from a very different perspective, and it's not really a perspective that I agree with, obviously. So in that sense, they're cringe. But a lot of what they say about tradition is very good, and I think is very useful and helpful. But the one argument they do say that is somewhat, I would say, powerful, is they say that why would God create only one religion and then only keep it in one geographical area if it's meant for the whole world? And then they look to ancient Judaism, not so much Christianity. Christianity has always been a religion trying to convert the world. But they look to Judaism and say, for thousands of years, God had the Jewish people as quote-unquote the chosen people. He was the only one. He presumably gave to them special revelation. Why would that be the case? Does God not care about the Yamana tribe and the Indo-European people and the Roman people, the Greek peoples? Does he not care about them enough to in any way give them any direction? And I can understand where they're coming from in that sense. And I'm not sure whether or not there was special revelation meaning that God appears or speaks to them through oracles, prophets, holy books, etc. Or maybe it was just general revelation being people follow the law that is written on their conscience. Just as people intuitively kind of have an understanding of the moral law, we have intuitively a belief in God. And so you can say that perhaps these similarities between religions are merely just people working out the general revelation that's already been written on their heart. There are some things that seem to be so specific that it might seem not to be the case or something, but and also like, is all of Hindu mythology, is it all like made up? Maybe it was demons and angels. Is that possible as well? Perhaps. I'm not sure. It's not something I have looked into very fully, but I do think the fullness of truth is contained entirely within the Catholic Church, and all people should become Catholic. Even if other people may be saved by following the conscience of their heart, or what have you, and maybe these religions have been able to exemplify some of these things, some better than others, ultimately they're saved still through Christ, implicitly saved through Christ in the church, and it's just their invincible ignorance that saves them, basically, that gives them that exception. So there's a lot of nuance there. You could say I'm a idiosyncratic perennial traditionalist, perhaps that title is not very well used, but I have a lot of respect for their authors. I read their authors a lot. That is why I included it in the intro, because it's something I discuss a lot. When it comes to caste systems, they talk a lot about individualism and why it's destructive. They talk a lot about cool esoteric things. So, it's a balance. It's not exactly the case that it's totally cringe, but there's elements of it where I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cringe, but definitely they're not religious chauvinist, I will say that, whereas I kind of am. And it seems the Catholic Church is. It's an interesting perspective, but again, if it turns out to like it's true or something, then I'll be like, oh, cool. There's more Hindus in heaven or something like, I don't know. But it's not like I'm not going to become what I see to be as a heretic in order to believe in something like that. So it's not something I would be willing to adopt. But there is validity in the fact that there is some underlying truths to all religions. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a religion very long. Look at Protestantism. Protestantism is probably the most profane of all modern religions because it's built on individualism. The other ones are built on at least some absolute value, something of transcendence, some eternal value, some virtue, truth or beauty or something like that. And for that reason, these societies have lasted as long as they have. Hinduism is the oldest religion in the whole world. And so there has to be something said to that effect, that there's, whatever is good is in it, whatever good is contained in it is Catholic, basically. All good things are Catholic. So, for example, I think it's very admirable that the Shintos have a strong, not veneration, I guess, but appreciation of nature. God, of course, I think speaks in nature quite often. The heavens and the earth proclaim the glory of God is something that perhaps in the West, industrial revolution has made us very myopic to these things. And so, I think that aspect of Shinto is obviously something that's points to something esoteric or some higher transcendental principle, which is true, and it's Catholic ultimately. But obviously Shintos are ignorant to that fact. Yeah, it's very complicated, but they're not. I would not say that they're all demon worshipping. That I fundamentally would reject. Is that St. Paul was specifically talking about Roman paganism, which had degenerated. That is the one thing I agree with Frithjof Schuon on, is that the paganism Paul spoke about, and Frithjof Schuon I think addresses that very point, being de Gruyper in his book Logic and Transcendence, where he kind of talks about the history of the Roman Empire and how it's very much degenerated into this point of the religion was very evil, and so that is why Frithjof Schuon, not me, Frithjof Schuon argues that is why Christianity had to come about, to basically kind of just like a perennial flower sometimes dies. God had to replant the flower through Christianity, and the reason why Christianity is so universal in its doctrine is because it had to convert all the different pagan tribes and groups in Western Europe. Again, I just don't think I can believe in that and also hold to the teachings of the church. Like you said, that part is kind of cringe. So, But there are good aspects to it, I think. Particularly the part I like the most is just the idea that people worship in different ways. That there is a spiritual element that is incorporated with the differences between various people groups. I think that is true, and that an Aryan is not the same as a Mongoloid, and that the rites of Aryans is different, and what have you. Shiva is I think the god of destruction in Hindu cosmology. It's complicated. I'm not going to go into that tonight, but yes and no. He's both kind of demonic and not. I think he's kind of like demiurge from Gnosticism. But yeah, I don't recognize Shiva as a legitimate spiritual authority, obviously. But I think that there probably was some angels or something like that. Maybe some of them were demons. I'm not sure to what extent they received, special revelation, but that. Like I said, it was there was a lot to get out there. It's a very nuanced issue, but the only reason I am as reactionary as I am today is partly because of their writing. So I own them quite a bit. With that, any other questions? And like I said, if you disagree like I do, then that you're actually, yeah, most people probably going to disagree. I don't think I have any followers who are strict perennial traditionalists, in the pure sense, obviously. Obviously, the church, though, has taught, and I've read the quotes out many times, the church has taught that there is salvation outside the visible body of the church, through the invincible ignorance, obviously, and that God can, and according to Unitatis Ordinte Oratio, in the Vatican II document, it says that God has worked outside the church and other various religions. His grace has worked in them to save souls, even if they're not the true religion, and therefore they still require proselytization. There's great quotes by, I think it was St. Basil. I read it off before in the past, maybe I'll do it another time. I'm too lazy to go with the book right now. In Frithjof Schuon's book, The Fullness of God, there's quotes from the church fathers also on this as well that talk about how they explicitly says that there are people who are not, they explicitly says that they, sometimes called godless, were worshiping the true God. They just did so without knowing it. They did so in ignorance, basically. In an imperfect way they did. Which was kind of like the extent to which I will go on that issue. And that's definitely not everyone, for sure. That's definitely not everyone in their religions, that's for sure. There's definitely a lot of superstition in Hinduism and Buddhism, for sure. Definitely not a lot of them, I think, are worshipping the true God. And even St. Paul mentions this as well. St. Paul in Romans says that there are Gentiles who followed the conscience written on their hearts. They followed the natural law, and they were saved. And it's talking about in conjunction with the times of the ancient Israelites. So, those are important points to remember. Everything. Vatican II is still unless you can point to me a place in it where it's contradicted, that line in Unitatis Ordinte Oratio, I think I'm saying that right, then Vatican II, it's a valid magisterium, so I have to submit to it. Unless the parts of Vatican II then maybe that theologians take issue with are the ones that would contradict previous papal statements. But even then, there's a lot of misinterpretation. My issue is more with the spirit of Vatican II than the precise documents themselves, as well as with the new Mass. That's what I'd say probably my bigger pet peeves. I think a lot of the documents have been misinterpreted. For example, there's a document in Nostra Aetate that says Muslims worship the one true, or they worship the one God, or something like that. And people think, oh, see, it's saying they worship the one true God. Muslims don't worship they don't have the Trinity. Clearly, they don't worship the one true God. This is heresy. When in fact, this was actually a reference to something that Pope St. Gregory VIII, was it the 7th? It was the 8th or the 7th. I forget. I think it was in the 7th. Pope St. Gregory VII wrote, where he was writing to Muslims right before the Crusades begun to try to stop, some of this Muslim expansion. And he writes very congenially, and he says that, you guys are monotheists, basically, like us. You are monotheists like us. We kind of share that, but obviously we have our differences. And Nostra Aetate says that we still have to convert the non-religious. That being said, are there issues that theologians have taken with the Second Vatican Council? Absolutely. Marcel Lefebvre had a lot to say about it, and I would look to what he has to say. Because he was, he was a church father, or a father of the council, the Second Vatican Council, and he was a very well-respected and very intelligent man, so I take what he says seriously. Okay, no more super chats. Any other comments, guys? Otherwise, we will move on to the anime period. We've been going almost for 2 hours. When we're hopefully we'll finish this up though. But again, the issues of these issues, there's gonna be a lot of disagreement. If you disagree with me, that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine. I believe everything that the Roman Catholic Church teaches. I accept all the dogmas and doctrines of the Church. So that's all I have to say. And so I'm not I do not wish to be in heresy. If you disagree about some, maybe the what's called extended baptism of desire, which is basically what I was talking about. There's room for disagreement. There's room for debate. A lot of these things are still debated by theologians. So, no last questions. Okay. Nope. Okay. Okay. All right. With that, thank you guys for watching and listening. I get the sense people didn't want to hear about perennial traditionalism the way I presented it. I get the sense people don't like that idea of like this. Very explicitly, the perennial traditionalists said ecumenism is gay, and that the idea that religions are just these imperfect receptacles of the truth, and that we should all just join hands and sing Kumbaya is retarded and neoliberal trash. But they would say that there's this esoteric ecumenism, or that we all share whatever underlying thing. I get the feeling that most people don't like that idea, and certainly my instinct isn't to like it very much either. I get the feeling that that's kind of the mood, and that's why people aren't talking too much. They're very incensed by that. Any case, like I said, I kind of take things in a very idiosyncratic sense. As hopefully I'm justified tonight. Hopefully I did a good job explaining it tonight. If you have more questions, let me know though. I do read a lot about it. The one thing that is the most obnoxious is when you meet someone who is a perennial traditionalist who's a pagan. I want to debate one of those so badly because they're so dumb. Like, all the perennial traditionalists thought they're retarded. Clearly they read some quotes from Evola and about Christianity being cucked or something. And then they thought, oh, okay, then paganism must be the way to go. It's retarded. Rene Guénon says that they're engaged in fantasies, and that such things are ridiculous. It says that there's no grounds for such assertions, which I thought was hilarious. In any case, let's move on to the anime. All right, let's just move on the anime, and yeah, let's just do that. So thank you guys for watching. Who watch on YouTube, make sure if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, subscribe. We're so close. We're so close to 500 subscribers. Please, can we get to some 500 subscribers? And here is my what is it called? What is that? The new meme that's come out. It's like the choosing, negotiation or whatever. Here's my deal. Here's my deal to you. You give me a subscriber, I get a subscriber. So how about that? Okay, sounds good. You subscribe, I get a subscriber. Okay, that is my deal to you guys. So make sure to do that because we're so close. Okay.